In this lesson, in this tutorial series, I'm going to show you how to set up a Digibyte pool on MiningCore. So in the previous lesson, we talked about what mining pools are, and we got MiningCore kind of the baseline setup configured. We got the web UI up and running. And so today we're going to set up our first pool, and we're going to cover how to set up either a solo or actual pool mining pool that you can use. So just as a recap real quick, if we're over on our system, if we do a sudo docker ps-a, we can see our containers. We've got pg admin, Postgres database, we're running Watchtower, we've got Dozzle, and we've got MiningCore and MiningCore Web UI. So those are all of our dependencies. They're already set up. Now we're going to set up Digibyte. So to do that, first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a folder. So I'm going to do mkdir/data/.dgb. And we need to do a sudo on that. That will vary based on your operating system. For me, I am running this in MMPOS. And so I have to do a sudo to create that folder there. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to download the RPC auth script that we need to do to generate RPC auth credentials. Most blockchain daemon node softwares will allow you to use a RPC username, RPC password. However, Digibyte requires you to do RPC auth, and they no longer support the straight username and password. So we're just going to do a wget, and we're going to download this file direct from the Digibyte GitHub. And this is going to be a Python script for RPC auth. Then we're just going to type python3 space rpcauth.py space, and we want to generate a username and a password. This is what we're going to use to actually be able to communicate with the node. So for me, for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to call it pool user and pool password. But you should make up, something kind of unique for you, and preferably a randomly generated password. And we're just going to do that. We're going to hit enter, and you can see it's going to give us a string. And this RPC auth, we want to copy this whole thing. This is very important. So once we have that copied, we want to create a config file for our daemon. So we're going to do nano/data.dgb/ and we're going to call this digibyte.conf. The name is very important. We need to do a sudo on that. And then within here, we're going to paste that RPC auth that we copied. And we're going to add a couple lines in here. So the first line we're going to add is server equals 1 and listen equals 1. This is going to tell it that we want to use it as a node on the network, but we're also want to have the RPC API enabled on it. And that's how our pool software is going to communicate with the node. And then we need to tell it what port we want to run that software on. And so this is optional. You can let this use a default, but I like to explicitly set my ports. That way I know they're never going to change, and I know there's not going to be a conflict. And then next, we want to do an RPC allow IP. And this is important. We're only going to allow this system to connect to the RPC. You have to be very cautious with RPC connections to nodes that have wallets, because in the event the credentials got hacked, somebody could drain that wallet just by calling the API. And so by us telling it it's only available on the local system, the only way somebody would be able to drain the wallet is to actually gain access to the system plus gain access to the API. And then we need, for Digibyte, we have to do algo equals SHA-256D. Now for me, I'm running this node on the SHA-256 algorithm. There are 5 different algos Digibyte supports. When you're setting up your node, you have to determine what algo you want to run. So for the purposes of this video, we are doing SHA-256. We've got our RPC auth in here, and we're going to enable pruning. So we're going to do prune equals 550. This is going to tell it to only keep the last 550 megabytes of the block space. And then we're going to do wallet equals default. This is going to make sure it opens the wallet on a startup. And then do Control X, Y, enter. And now we need to set up and run the Docker container for the Digibyte node. So we're going to do sudo docker run -d --network host --restart always --log -opt max -size equals 10m --name. We're just going to this DGB -v. We got to do a volume mapping, so it's going to be /data /.dgb, and we're going to map that to /root /.digibyte spelled out. And then we're going to do space, and we're going to do the retro mic /nodes :digibyte. So what this is going to do when I hit enter here, it's going to run it in detached mode using our host network device. It's going to always restart if it ever crashes. We're going to have a rolling log file that has a max size of 10 megabytes. And the container name is going to be DGB, which is just the ticker for the coin. And our volume mapping. So all of our blockchain data is going to be stored in /data /.dgb. Go ahead and hit enter. This is going to download the image from Docker Hub and start the container. And what should happen after a few moments, it will start the container and we should be able to see the logs where it's starting to sync the blockchain. So to validate that, we can do a sudo docker log logs DGB. And we can see it's starting to kind of spin things up. If we do sudo docker logs DGB --follow, this will continually follow the logs. And we can see that it is kind of setting up the headers and starting to sync the blockchain. And we can do Control-C to kind of dismiss that. And we can see it is actually syncing. It's all the way back in 2014, which is when the Digibyte blockchain launched. And you can kind of see the block heights. It is syncing. Now, this is going to take a while to sync. We're going to let that run in the background. But while that's running, we can continue to set up the pool. So the next thing we need to do is we need to create a wallet for Digibyte. Now, Digibyte doesn't, by default, it doesn't create a wallet for you. Some blockchains do. And the easiest way to check that is we can do a sudo docker exec DGB space and then do Digibyte -CLI. And we can type get balance. And you can see it'll tell you no wallet is loaded. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do sudo docker exec DGB, say Digibyte -CLI. We're going to do create wallet space. We're going to hold this default. If you remember when we created the config file, we said we wanted it to load a wallet of default. So we want to create a default wallet. And that's going to create it. And now we need to create an address for us to use that serves as our pool wallet. So to do that, we're going to do a sudo docker exec DGB Digibyte -CLI. And we're going to do get new address, all one word, space. We're going to do double quotes, followed by double quotes. So just kind of an empty string there. And then double quotes legacy, double quotes. Go ahead and hit enter. This is going to create a wallet address for us. So we're going to go ahead and copy this. And now we're basically just waiting for that blockchain to sync. Let's just double check the status of that real quick. We can see it is syncing away. Yep. So what we're going to do now is we want to configure the MiningCore config file to add the pool. So if you remember in the last video, we created a config file at /data /.miningcore /config.json. If we pull that up, you're going to see this is that config file that we created that we didn't define any pools in yet. So I'm going to hit Control X here, and I'm going to run cat instead of nano. So I'm going to do a cat /data /.miningcore /config.json. What this is going to do is this is going to print that config file out to the console. And this allows us to click and drag and copy and paste all of this. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste all this contents. Now, when I'm building configs, typically I will just use it. I'll do it in Nano, super easy. for me, just because I'm used to the JSON standard. However, if you're not too familiar with it, there are some easier options you can use. I'm going to show you one of those options today, which is jsonformatter.org. We're going to head on over to jsonformatter.org, and on the left here, we're going to paste in all that content that we just copied from the shell window. And you can see that it's got everything in here, and then our pool section is kind of blank, an empty array here. So if we wanted to add pools, we would essentially do something like this, where we do an open, close curly brace, followed by a comma, and then another one. And let's just do 3 here as an example. Put a comma there. And essentially what you would end up with is you would end up with 3 pools here. One, so this could be like Digibyte Solo, Digibyte PPLNS, and maybe Bitcoin Solo if you wanted. For the purposes of today's video, we're going to set up 2 pools. I'm going to show you how to do a Solo Digibyte pool, and then also a PPLNS pool. So to do that, I've already have a sample for the Solo pool that we're going to kind of use as our baseline. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to copy this in here. And one of the things you're going to notice before I copy it in is I can hit Format Beautify, and on the right side, it'll give me a nice pretty layout. So once I put that pool in here, I don't have to worry about indenting or anything like that. If I hit Format Beautify, come over here. Sorry, we'll dismiss the ads here. And what you'll see is it actually brought in that Digibyte. So we're going to create 2 of those though. So we've got DGB. I'm just going to call this DGB Solo. And then we're going to come down, and where that last closing curly brace is, I'm going to add a comma, hit enter. I'm going to paste again, and we're going to call this DGB PPLNS. We have Format and Beautify. And if we bring this up, whoops, hit the little maximize here, this will bring it up on full screen mode for you. And you can actually switch to like a tree view, where it'll show you kind of each of those segments and what we have. So we've got a basically 0 index and a 1 index. And you can see the IDs here. And for us, we've got, if we go to the payment processing section, we can expand payment scheme out config. So we can see this one is Solo. And this one, sorry, you may need to dismiss the add at the bottom to fully expand it. But if we come down to this one, we can actually double click here and change this by typing PPLNS, hitting and clicking off of it. And now if we switch back to code view, you can see that will reflect for you as well. Ultimately, what you're going to do is you're going to build out the config here, and then you'll be able to just do a Control A, copy. There's even a copy button up here that you can just click, and it'll copy the whole thing for you, and you'll be able to paste that in. So you've got some options on the editors. So you can do like a form editing mode here. So if we just click in here, and you know, we're just going to fill out the info, which I'm going to cover here in a second. I just kind of wanted to show this to you. If you're not familiar with JSON, this is a really easy editor to use, and it allows you to kind of pick and choose the data elements that you are modifying, and it keeps the structure intact for you. So I'm going to hop back on over to the code view because that is what I am most comfortable with. And we're just going to kind of walk down this list here. So we've got our ID. This has to be unique. We want enabled true. Our coin is going to be Digibyte SHA-256. And then our address. This is going to be that wallet address that we just created. And so I've got that. We're going to go ahead and bring that over here and put that in here. I'm actually going to hit X there, and I'm going to go back to the original source side. And we're going to work off of this source side. Just make it a little bit easier. And so we're just going to come down, and the address, I'm going to plug in the address there. I want that to be the reward recipient as well. This will mean 1% pool fee will go to this wallet. And you have the option for a miner bonus percentage. You can just leave this as 0. If you're unsure what this is for, you guys shouldn't need to use this. This is what I use on my pool to issue back like a 25% reward bonus back to miners. If you're running your own local pool, you won't need to do that. Enable ASIC boost true. Make sure you have this set. If you're going to use a BitAxe or really any modern SHA-256 miner, make sure you leave that on. You can set the block refresh interval, rebroadcast timeouts, all of that. These should all be good for you as default. If you want to enable or disable banning, you can do that there. And on our port numbers. So I like to run a couple different ports. For SHA-256 coins like Digibyte, I like to run a general ASIC port, this is basically going to become the Stratum port that you connect to. So in this case, you would do like Stratum plus TCP : / whatever your IP address is, :5001. It's going to start you at a low difficulty of 1024, and it can take itself all the way down to 1. There is no upper max. So what that means is if you have a high hash rate device, it will gradually readjust its difficulty to meet the optimal share submission ratio so that you're not over consuming bandwidth, things like that. I like to also set up secondary port for nerd miners and for super low hash rate devices. So this pool will work with nerd miners. I know there's not a lot of pools I work with. However, all you need to do is on the difficulty, you want to start it at 0.001, and you want to set the min difficulty all the way down to 0.001. 3 zeros there and a 1. And that will essentially allow the nerd miners to actually submit shares to your pool. And it'll still adjust that difficulty up to whatever hash rate it can handle. And then the daemon, this needs to be the IP address of the node, which is still syncing, the RPC port that we specified, the user that we specified there, and then the password. We did pool password, I believe. So let's go ahead and do that. And then the payment processing, you can see we've got a payout scheme of Solo. And then we've got our second pool here. So just to keep things super simple, I'm going to remove everything we added for that second one and recopy the first one here. Paste it here and change the payout scheme to PPLNS. Oops. And make sure that we change the ID here to PPLNS. And then we want to make sure, so it can still use the same node connection, same pool wallets, all of that, but we have to have unique ports. So I'm going to tell this 5002 and a 5102. Once we do that, we can go ahead and we see we actually have a parsing error. So it'll tell you if you mess something up, from a kind of a text standpoint, it will actually tell you that. So let's see what we messed up. It actually gives us the line number, line 194. If we hit format and beautify, you can see it is good to go. So if you have any syntax errors, whenever you hit format beautify, it will give you those. So as an example here, if we were to put in a syntax error, let's just say we put comma X here, went to format beautify, you can see it says there's a parsing error. It gives us the line number that has the parsing error, which is line 194. Go ahead and take that out, format beautify, and we know the JSON is good. So now we can basically just copy this whole thing. And we're going to come back to the pool, and we're going to do a nano. Actually, we're going to do sudo nano /data /dot miningcore /config.json. And you can just replace the contents of this file. So if you hold down the control key and hold down K, that will actually delete all the lines for you. Then we can right click. That's going to paste in all of the lines for us. And now we've got everything in here. We've got our kind of core pool config at the top there that is used kind of system wide. And then down here, we've got our solo pool definition. And then below that, we've got our PPLNS pool definition. So now if we do Control X, Y, and then enter to save, now we can do a sudo docker logs dgb. Let's just see where it's at. So we can see it's still syncing. Obviously, it's only in February of 2014. However, this doesn't stop us from spinning up the pool because the pool's self-aware of that the node is syncing, and it can adapt itself around that. So we can actually finish this up by the one thing I like to do. Now, if you're running Watchtower, you should be okay already, but I like to make sure I'm always running the latest version of the MiningCore software, and the same thing with the Pool Web UI. So I'm going to include this command for you guys. Basically, this will re-download any updates to the container image that I've posted. It'll stop MiningCore. It'll rerun it using the new image. So this is the same command that we did in the previous video. This is kind of what Watchtower would do if it detects an update. So we're going to go ahead and do this, and you can see there actually was an update that wasn't on my system for MiningCore that I recently published. So we're going to let this download that new image and run it. Once that's done, we can do a sudo docker logs MiningCore. And there you can see, if we take a look at the logs, it actually has started up MiningCore, and it actually gives us that percentage of how much the blockchain daemon has been downloaded. We're going to do similar for the web UI. So we're going to do a sudo docker pull the retro mic slash MiningCore Web UI. We're going to stop the MiningCore Web UI, and we're going to remove that container. We're going to then start up a new container. The big important thing here is make sure your port 80 here is mapped to 8080, and then make sure the API base URL is the IP of your system. And same thing with the Stratum host. So just replace 192.168.145 in this command with whatever your IP address is. Go ahead and hit enter. This is going to download any updates and start that up. Now if we hop on over to a web browser and we go to the IP address of the system, we can see we've got both of our Digibyte pools. Now you're going to notice that the network difficulty says 0, network hash rate shows 0. Pool hash rate obviously is going to be 0. We haven't connected anything there, but these numbers won't fill in until the blockchain is fully synced. However, there's nothing blocking you from pointing a miner here. It just won't do anything until the blockchain is fully synced. And so when you come over here, you're going to see you've got your Stratum ports that we set up. So you've got your general ASIC port, and then you've got your nerd miner port. Again, we set both of those up. And this is going to be the PPLNS one. And then if we go back to mining pools, we can go to the solo one. We can see the ports for those ones as well. Once the node is fully synced, your block reward will fill in here. This will be the real-time block reward that is being issued by the Digibyte network. And you basically just point your miners at the Stratum URL and start mining to it. That's pretty much all there is at this point. It's just a waiting game, waiting for the blockchain to finish syncing, and then configuring your miners are as simple as using this endpoint, and then you're going to use your wallet address as the mining address. You can do a dot and a worker name if you want to track a worker name. Password can just be X. Password doesn't really matter. If you want to do a static difficulty, you can do that in the password using D equals, and then whatever you want the static difficulty to be. But if you do that, it'll override the var diff, which I don't recommend. Usually I recommend just leaving the variable difficulty and let it adjust itself. But that's all there is to getting the pools up and running. And if you decide that you don't want the PPLNS pool, it's super easy. All you have to do is come back over and do a nano/data.miningcore/config.json. We need to do a sudo here. And then go down and we can see this is our solo pool. We've got our PPLNS pool here. I can just come in here. I can do enabled false, Control X, Y, enter. Now that config file doesn't get picked up until you restart the MiningCore service. So you have to do a sudo docker restart MiningCore. You do not have to restart the web UI, but now if we hop on over and we give this a refresh, you can see we now only have the solo pool up and running. So even though it was in the config file, by flipping that flag, we're able to disable it. So at any time, if you need to make changes to that config file, just be aware that you do need to restart the MiningCore service. But that's it for this video. That's all there is to getting it up and running. And like I said, it really is a waiting game now. It's basically just waiting until the image, or the node is done syncing. So if we just do a follow here, and this is going to take a while. It won't consume a lot of data and storage because we have the printing enabled. It's just going to take a really long time to get everything synced. It's still less than 1% complete. So, just be patient with the syncing. Depending on your hardware specs, this could take a day or two to actually sync the blockchain. But once that's done, point your miners to it and you'll be solo mining. And then, once a block gets hit, it will hit the pool wallet, and then there is a kind of a cooldown period the blockchains have. So it hits your wallet. It may take like 100 confirmations before the payout hits whatever your wallet is that you were mining with.